Hey, Will.
Hey there, how's it going?
How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, hanging out today.
Great, man. Great.
Yeah, I'm in a coffee shop right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just got back from a wonderful travel over in Spain and sold my house the same day that I was at an Ibiza wedding.
Wow. Is that on Instagram? I saw you were like on a boat. Is that for that
Yeah,
same trip?
yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Oh,
We flew in, and the same day that we got off the flights, within like we had a 30-minute time window to be able to get off the plane, get our baggage, get to the docks, and then we arrived 500 yards ahead of the wedding party. So, yeah, it was
wow, that's
absolutely
cool.
nuts. Yeah, it was crazy. I flew in a girl from Paraguay,
Oh, yeah.
so coordinating flights from Atlanta, Georgia, and Paraguay, two different continents, to both
Oh,
arrive
wow.
at Visa within 10 minutes of one another, and then making sure that we could get onto that boat. It was
Yeah,
wild.
yeah, that sounds crazy, man. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was nuts. The worst part was when I warned her. I said, when you get off the plane, you got to be ready to go. Like, we don't have much time.
Yeah.
And she was nowhere to be found. She was like primping herself, in the mirror. So she looked good when we first saw each other. And she was not ready for this boat ride. And then she's like, "Oh, baby, I've got to change clothes." And I was like, 30 minutes, 30 minutes later, she walks out of the airport bathroom looking cute. She looked cute, but
Yeah.
she made the time window really tight, and that was an ongoing trend throughout the entire trip.
Oh, damn. Well, the woman tends to do that though anyway.
Yeah, in my experience, women usually have like a couple tiers of makeup that they do. You've got the car makeup, you've got the going to a nice lunch or brunch makeup, and then you've got like the five-star restaurant makeup, like you
Yeah.
going to a stop and shoot. And with this one, every single time was there was no lower tiers. It was all the way
Like
up.
5 star all the way.
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome though.
yeah. Ooh, man, my coffee's starting to wear off.
Oh yeah, you need a new one.
I don't know, man. Yeah. Let's see here. We got 4 minutes before we get started. We will begin this probably at 2:05. So really, we've got about 9 minutes before we get going. So if you guys need to go grab yourself a drink, a snack, go to the restroom, do what you got to do to be able to get comfortable, and then we'll start rocking and rolling with this today.
Cool, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All righty, T-minus 5 minutes to let some more people show up here. Four minutes. Hey, we got another one. What do you know? That's all you have to do, right? As soon as I start talking about this stuff, we'll probably have like 5 more people join. That's how it always goes, man. Look, there's another. All you got to do is just, close the door in a classroom, and that's when everyone comes a knocking. It's guaranteed every single time.
How are you doing today?
I am rocking and rolling, getting all the things done. I just came from a destination wedding trip over in Barcelona. I got back on Sunday. So I also just got a new laptop this week, trying to get like my life back in order and get settled. In Windows now has on their like latest laptops, it's got this weird reactive like centering thing. So I don't know if you guys can see my screen, but it's kind of doing this like floating business where it's trying to like center me. And I think it's really, really bizarre. That's how I felt in my head this entire week, like some kind of time lapse montage of being back home. There it goes. Did you guys see it? All right, we got 2 more minutes. Watch this again. This is hilarious. Have you ever seen the meme of the squirrel that looks like he's done something wrong? All right, so let it back up. Try and track me. Doesn't know where I'm at. Okay. I hope you guys can see this. Did it do it? You see it? It's weird. I don't know how I feel about it. Every time it starts to zoom in, I want to make that face.
It's a great effect.
All right, we got one more minute here, and then we'll get started. One more time. Here we go. It's totally like The Office or like some kind of like dun 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 type of moment when it does the slow zoom in. I can't believe they tested that and released it and weren't just cracking up every time it did that. That'd be a really, really hard thing. I want to make a face every time I see it do this. Oh man. Well, we got, probably 30 seconds until we get started. So I'll do a quick little warm-up story today before this gets official. And this is a funny one about salary negotiations. And we got one more to join. How about that? Right on time. So this is just a quick little warm-up story. Then I'll do the introduction today. We'll talk about sort of salary prices across the United States. That's the market that I'm familiar with. But I think the overreaching principles that I'm going to be talking about are applicable to whatever market it is that you are in. We'll go through some questions, how to be able to zoom through LinkedIn and kind of get a feel for the different jobs that are out there. And really, like I always try to do, the best way to do this is just to tell you guys what my experience has been with salary negotiations. And it'll make more sense once I kind of do my intro spiel here in just a moment. But one time, this is the short story, I had a job offer from, actually, I'll tell you two job offer stories. The second one after the intro. But I had a job offer. I lived in China for 2 years, and I speak enough Mandarin, I always say, to be able to get a date and get a drink. I had left China. It had been about 2 years later after I stopped living there. And I got a job offer to go work for an adult toy company back in mainland China. I was going to be a 3D modeler for, I guess, taking AutoCAD models or assembling AutoCAD models for production for adult toys. And it would have brought me back to China. And I could not realistically, when we got into the negotiations and we're talking about the salary, I couldn't take the job because over there, they are so serious and inwardly facing that there would have been little objects vibrating and moving around and twisting all over the table, and everyone in the room would have been just completely straight-faced, saying, "Oh, this is a very good product. We like this a lot. Oh, very, very strong feeling." And I would be cracking up the entire time. And I think that's a great story to be able to lead with. I didn't take the job for that particular reason. But when you're going through these salary negotiations, when you're going through any kind of job interviewing process, I think a lot of people have the tendency to get really, really nervous. And the best way that you can do it is just to stay absolutely, completely relaxed in the moment and be able to have fun with it and joke around with these types of people. It helps to humanize the experience when you are rigid with your hands in front of you and this is my job, this is what I do, this is my experience. Relax. In the same way that I'm kind of going to be telling you guys stories in a very casual manner today, I think that's a really strong way to be able to go into the interviewing, the salary negotiations process. I'm one of those who maybe sometimes tells a little bit too much, but being able to humanize your experience and talk honestly and realistically about what your needs are is a skill that is going to help you not only with your jobs, but in every single area and relationship that you have in your life. I can't tell you how often during my 20s I used to relate trying to find a job and getting hired to the dating world and being a young single man at that time on the trials and tribulations and kind of the overlap between sort of pitching and what you need and what they need and all that stuff. And is it a good fit? Are you going to keep seeing each other? So there might be some more analogies of that nature today when we're talking about negotiations. But anyways, the introduction. For myself, my name is William Moritz, and I have been working in the creative industry in the design world for, God, about 20 years now. Don't do the math. I'm getting up there. But it has been a wonderful journey for me, full of all types of different roles, responsibilities, levels of companies that I've worked for, Fortune 500 companies, Porsche, Delta, AT&T, Red Bull, and then a lot of smaller companies that you've never heard of before, startups that are just getting started. I've served as a creative director a couple different times for a financial tech company, for a gaming company, for a mobile app, quiz app company. And then I've also been lead designer, lead 3D animator, motion graphics artist. It's not a linear path that I've had by any means. I was not one of those fellas who got out of school, had that rock star portfolio, got hired by EA right away, and then just have got a corner office at EA 20 years down the line and have never really done anything else. So I think that makes me, in a very roundabout kind of way, have the privilege to be able to talk to you guys today about what navigating the creative industry really looks like and what it feels like. And what these different types of jobs, God, I've been on hundreds of job interviews. I have sent out thousands of resumes. I have, at the same time, now at this part of my career, kind of that like upper mid-level section of your career, I've gotten to interview people. I've gotten to read the resumes. I've gotten to be a professor for 10 years and help students just coming out of school kind of launch themselves and really kind of use a lot of these lessons that I've learned to be able to help get you guys ahead a little bit. And essentially, it's all the stuff I wish someone had told me when I was early in my career that I can pass on to you guys now to be able to help you understand what it is that you're looking at and what is out there a little bit more. So I hope that gives you some kind of background about me and where I've been. Told you I was going to tell you a second story about getting hired and creative negotiations. This one is absolutely wonderful. So I don't know if you guys know, I'll go ahead and share my screen out now. We'll start looking at some stuff. But if y'all know who Lisa Frank is, anyone know who Lisa Frank is? All right, let's go share the entire screen. If you're not familiar with Lisa Frank, Lisa Frank, can you guys see my screen okay? Please just, I can't see you guys at this point, so just give me a yes if you can. Somebody?
Yeah, we can.
Cool beans. All right, so let's give this some context. Lisa Frank. This is Lisa Frank. Oh yeah, that. That might be an AI-generated Lisa Frank. That doesn't feel like it's actually one of her illustrations. That's got sort of an AI tinge to it, especially when we start looking up in the clouds up in that area. It doesn't quite look like her style. But this is Lisa Frank. So if you were alive during the late 80s or the middle of the 90s, Lisa Frank was absolutely everywhere. And I got a job offer one time to be an illustrator for Lisa Frank. And they were going to have me, it was a great time to be alive. If there was ever a time to be drawing psychedelic, rainbow-colored, cute tigers and unicorns, that was it during the early 2000s. And I was going to take this job because I thought it'd be absolutely hilarious to do this professionally. And just a story to be able to tell forever. But the job did not work out. And I went through many different rounds of the negotiation process. And ultimately, I ended up having to walk away from this job. So this is a good story because it's sort of the artist standing by themselves and not getting sort of pushed around and putting up some good, healthy emotional boundaries when it comes to what you can do for work. So, and I know that can be really, really hard to do, especially when you're starting off or you've got some other job that's not related to the creative field and you're just so excited and hungry to be able to get in the door no matter what. But for this Lisa Frank job, what was going to happen was they wanted me to move to not Scottsdale, Arizona, but another another smaller town in the state of Arizona. If you're not familiar with the state of Arizona, it's in the United States. It's in the western United States. It is an extraordinarily hot area. Think like Death Valley, just red rock pillars, and there is nothing around you for like hundreds of miles in some areas of this state. It's not a very populated place. And Lisa Frank in the state of Arizona, hi there, has got a home office that looks like a Bond villain lair. All right, so it looks like a James Bond villain lives there. This is one of the few photos that you can find of Lisa Frank on the internet. She hides her face. Vice magazine a couple years ago did an interview kind of on the backstory of Lisa Frank and how things operate in there. And when she was in this Vice interview, she was hidden. She was completely in shadow, like an FBI witness, and they had like changed her voice to where like you couldn't actually hear what she sounded like. It was absolutely bizarre. It's like they had some broken windows. But anywho, so this is what the Lisa Frank office looks like, and this is in the middle of the desert. There's absolutely nothing around this space. I mean, all of it just sort of, gosh, feels pretty sad. And as I started to research Lisa Frank, I realized that the price that they were going to pay me was like, God, $40,000 a year, maybe $35,000 a year, which to be able to live in the United States is not really not that much money. It is a survival paycheck to where you can do the work if that's something that you absolutely essentially had to have on your resume at that time, but it would not give me enough money to be able to move on to the next steps within my life. The other problem was that the cost of living, once I got out there to this small little town in Arizona, there we go. Now we're getting an idea of what this thing looks like. Once I got out to this small little town within Arizona, I was going to be making such a little amount of money that I would never be able to reasonably move away from this space. The point that I'm trying to make here is that you need to make sure with whatever job it is that you're going to take or that you're going to sign up for, that during the salary negotiations phase, that you are making sure that you can cover your basic monthly income, your bills, you have enough to be able to survive. If you are young and single, like I was during my 20s, that you have the ability to take women on nice dates, that you have some kind of spending money within that salary negotiation. And finally, you want to make sure that you have got enough that you can actually put a little bit away for savings to be able to move on to the next step. With Lisa Frank, I went back and forth with them several times, and I said, okay, well, this is the price that I actually need, and they weren't really willing to negotiate with me. I did an art test, looked like this, came out great, and then they really were very insistent that I come in and I work on site for Lisa Frank to be able to do 3D illustrations of this. And I'd done my research on Glassdoor. And the stories that start to come up when you look up any of these companies on Glassdoor, right? Glassdoor, we have the idea that it's sort of like ratemyprofessor.com. It's only the worst employees that end up, posting on here, or if they get fired because they're lazy or whatever, and then they bash the company. But as I started to read through these Glassdoor stories, the picture started to come together for what Lisa Frank really was. And it was absolutely wild. So there had been, at some point in Lisa Frank's history, a divorce that took place between her and her husband. And they both split the company equally. And this divorce got ugly. And they ended up taking it out on their artists that were within the company. So it led to the point where they were monitoring the artists' computers. They're monitoring every word that they typed. They're monitoring emails. They had installed cameras with microphones into this studio space to be able to watch you and to make sure that you were staying on task and you weren't talking any trash about either the husband or the wife or whatever while this was going on. So it just became more and more sinister. Like the more that I learned about Lisa Frank, and I am so happy that I said no to this particular job. Now, if I'd been able to work off site and be able to manage my own time for $35,000, $40,000 a year, I could have lived, comfortably, somewhere else, taken on other work and other contracts, and supplemented my income in other areas, which is something over the years I've had to do quite a bit. A lot of times, I should tell you this, for about the past 10 years of my life, I've been lucky enough to be able to work remotely and to not have to go into an office. And I really appreciate that. But oftentimes that leads me to take on various gig jobs with the spare time that I have when I'm not commuting. So let's talk about that a little bit. When it comes to taking a job offer, in this day and age, post-COVID, considering, do they need you actually on site? Do you need to be in the office, or do you have the ability to be able to have flex hours, or are you going to be fully remote for this team? I love being remote. I like working in my house. I've got all my cool stuff in my house. I can take a nap, for 30 minutes if I need to recharge for a second. And the city that I live in, within Atlanta, Georgia, within the United States, and it's in the southeastern region of the United States, is notorious for having horrible traffic. So for myself, living in this particular state right now, if I took a job that is on site, the commute each day would be about 1 hour each way. There's really no getting around it. So if it's 1 hour each way, I leave in the morning, 7 a.m. to get there at 8 a.m. or 8 a.m. to get there at 9 a.m. in the morning. That's 1 hour. I've got a 1 hour commute on my way back, and that's if there's no traffic, if there's no accidents. Sometimes that time can go up. So we're talking about salary negotiations still, I promise. We'll get back to it. It's going to make sense. But we've got 2 hours per day, 5 days a week. That's 10 hours a week. Times 4 weeks in a month, all of a sudden you're up to 40 hours a month in your car commuting. That's an entire week worth of working hours that you could be billing to someone else, that you could be working on your own portfolio, that you could be working on your passion pieces, that you could be working another job to be able to make more money, to get your career off the ground, to be able to survive. And I'm not above really kind of fighting for staying fully remote. My job right now with the CDC, I work in a virtual reality development team for them. If they ever called us back into the office, I would quit that job the next week, just because of that 40 hours a week that I would have to be in there. If they require you to come into the office, sometimes that's the case, then you need to keep those 40 hours in mind for when you're doing your salary negotiations. And it's perfectly fine to be able to bring this up within the interview when they say, okay, well, we're going to need you to come into the office. And then you turn back and you say, okay, well, if this is the price that you have the job listed for, if you want me on site, then we have to consider what the commute time is going to be, what the time commitment outside during transition or in transit is going to be, and let's renegotiate the salary. And I think that is a perfectly fair position to be in. If someone asked me to come into the office for the CDC, the job that I have right now, those 40 hours a week that I would spend commuting, I would do it. However, I would charge them an absolute premium. I would renegotiate my salary so that I'm getting an extra 40 hours a month, an extra week's worth of pay, so that it supplements the time that I'm driving. Now, the other problem with that is that's the fair bare minimum of it. The other part is that I don't get to be around my stuff, right? I like my stuff, and I don't want to use my gas in my car and the price of that and the wear and tear on my vehicle. So all of a sudden, I have to take that into consideration with the price as well. So it's not just one more week of work. If I was doing that from home, that would be fine. Now I've got a vehicle that I have to drive everywhere that I'm putting at risk within the crazy drivers of Atlanta. So I'm going to ask for even more money because I'm having to drive my car. Finally, I'm going to ask for even more money on top of that because I don't have the ability to go out within that extra 40 hours and try to negotiate or do other work that's going to pay me at a higher rate for gig jobs. And, you're starting to see what the picture looks like and some of the tools that, as having those kind of naturalistic conversations with people and just being upfront about it, really looks like. And, sometimes people will say, well, we're going to have you sign a non-compete form. That is totally fine. Non-compete forms are the greatest thing in the entire world. For the past 10 years of my life, most often I'm working 3 different jobs, right? So right now I'm talking to you guys, and this is sort of the teaching side of things. For the CDC, I'm doing virtual reality development. And then usually I'll have one other contract that's either doing illustration, motion graphics, or web design, web development, branding, graphic design, package design, something else. So throughout the day, I'm really working 3 different parts of my brain. There's no non-compete that can cover that within the creative field, as long as you're staying agile and realizing just how many things you can really do. So the place that I'm at while I'm having this call with you guys today, it's called Monroe, Georgia. It's a very small town outside of Atlanta. I sold my house recently in Atlanta, and while I was at this wedding in Ibiza. And Monroe for me is a spot that I got stuck at. I kind of call this crash landing, which seems to happen to me, every 10 years. The time span's getting longer, luckily, as I get older. My mom lives out here. But there's one time when I got out here, I think I'd just gotten back from China, or maybe the economy had crashed, and I was looking, and I was kind of getting stuck in this area. I wasn't really moving forward. And if I could go back in time and tell the story to myself of where I'm at now, I don't think my younger self would really sort of believe me. And the advice that I want to be able to pass on to you guys is that there is a company out there that wants to hire you, that wants a hardworking creative that is putting in the hours, that's putting in the time, that's dedicated to this field, that wants to be at that professional level somewhere. And that was the lesson I finally had to learn when I was out here in this small little Georgia town for a little while. I was working with my local artist community, or my artist center. I was working at the Boys and Girls Club, which is an outreach program, as their art director. But it wasn't really getting me into that upper level echelon of design and career jobs that I needed to be able to push my life forward. And I ended up hitting the road and going out and finding it. So this map that I've got here right now on the screen is the salary range within the United States for creative work and creative jobs. And like I was saying at the beginning, we're going to talk about the region, the United States. This is what I'm familiar with, but I want you, if you're able, and to please consider this if you're living in Europe, if you're living somewhere else, if you're living near Southeast Asia, wherever it happens to be, that likely there is a sliding scale of pay that works in the same way as the United States here. So what we can see is on the far end over here on the left-hand side, we've got $39,000. There's that 40K pay amount for the United States. That is so low. Here's Arizona, right? This is the desert that I was going to be living in. It looks like the pay's increased a little bit more since that happened to me back in the day. But within the United States, we've got a couple markets that are pretty interesting to talk about. On the high end, the very dark side, we've got $116,000 to $127,000. And this graph is for the average 3D modeler salary by state, okay? They calculate this every year. And over here on the left-hand side, we've got California. The average salary for a 3D animator or modeler is going to be $100,000. Now, these are the comparisons that you have to consider. At the same time, I live in Georgia. It's half the amount that I would get paid in California if I was working as a 3D animator. However, the cost of living, the expenses to be able to live within California, $100,000 will put you at a middle of the road income to where, you can kind of take the girl that you're dating out to some nice places like once a month, but for the most part, you're not really, whining and dining and sending them over the moon. The money does not go as far. The cost of living is so much higher. Your house is going to end up being maybe $3,000 to $5,000 a month for a one bedroom within the city of Los Angeles or San Francisco. San Francisco being a major tech hub where you've got Zynga and a whole bunch of different app development games and mobile works that are going on, augmented reality, all that good stuff. And then LA, of course, being the film industry. Now, within Atlanta, Georgia, that price tag that you're getting paid is $50,000. However, the cost of living within Atlanta, Georgia is going to end up being around maybe $1,600 to $2,500 for a one bedroom apartment within the city. And you're pretty much at the exact same level where you can take that girl out, once a month to a really nice place, but you're not, throwing it over the moon and making it rain every single day. It will give you some long-term savings, but it's not really going to work. The trick that I like the most when it comes to salary negotiations, and one of the reasons why I like to work, there's there's an alarm going on out there. Wait for them to close the door and then we'll get back to it. But so if I'm living in the state of Georgia right now, that's where I live. If I can get one of those off-site jobs, in the same way that I was negotiating with Lisa Frank, for a company that is in California, either San Francisco or LA, then all of a sudden I can be making California dollars, $100,000 a year, twice the income that I would be making if I got a job doing the exact same thing within the state of Georgia. So all of a sudden my money now, even though I'm living at a cheap rate, is coming from a very high-end place. And this is the dream. This is a dream that I came up with when I was in my 20s and living in China. My goal was always to live in China when the yuan was really, really low. It was like 1 to 7 to the American dollar. So I was living at 1/7 the price that I would be in the United States. And to turn around and while I'm living in China at 1/7 the living cost, be able to turn around and make American dollars so that I could live like an absolute king and make it rain all the time within China. They tried that with missiles and seeding the air. It went horribly. It wasn't a good idea. It completely flooded China. So don't do that. But these are some things to be able to consider when it comes to salary negotiations, your location, where you're at, cost of living, and all that good stuff. Let's break for a second. We're at the halfway point before we move into the next part of this thing, which is searching those jobs and how to be able to approach the questions once you actually get into the interview and you get into the negotiation side. But I want to open it back up to you guys to be able to ask me any questions that you have up until this point. If anything's firing off within your brains, if this has made you say, that's interesting, but I wonder, now's a great time. We're going to take 5-8 minutes to be able to ask any of those questions that you have, and I'll do my best to be able to answer them for you.
Hey, Will, thanks for the amazing lecture so far. How would you approach perhaps a cold email, perhaps a cold message from LinkedIn, but how would you approach a recruiter if you want to get remote work?
Oh, that's an absolutely great question, man. I love that one. So back in the day, I was actually just talking to a buddy about this because I sold my house. I was talking to a friend of mine who I've only known from like the club and like party world here in Atlanta. And it turns out this guy was like on track to be a Wall Street, like on the floor level, like stock trader when he was in his 20s. And a series of events within corporate America caused this guy to completely just tune in and drop out of the rat race and ended up starting to sell holistic medicine that he turned into a massive business for himself. Interesting guy. If you guys all probably know someone that's kind of like that in your world. But we got to talking about it, and he did the exact same thing that I used to do when he was pulling in these $1 million clients for the investment firms. And back in the day, he would have a list of the company name. I'll try not to have, I'm writing something right now. Try not to have doctors writing so you guys can all read it. Company name, last contact, notes, important people, and just how many times. Okay, so this is the way, come on, get focused. I don't know. You can't see my face. I hope that's gonna work. Okay, so it's not really showing up, but I can still verbally explain it. So over here, I've got the company name, right, that you wanna work for. This is you on LinkedIn trying to get a cold email on somebody. So you're gonna start off and saying, hey, look, I noticed that you guys are hiring or you have a position open right now. I'm very interested in the job and I'd like to know more about what this position entails. What is the time frame? That's always an important thing, really important. We'll get to why on this list here in just a second. Why the time frame for hiring is so crucial. But when are you guys planning on moving forward, and is this position actually going to get started? Next up on here is the last contact time and any notes. So this financial advisor, what he used to do with all these investors or people he was trying to get to invest with him, was he would have the person's name. In this case, for a digital designer, it's the company's name. You would have the last time that you contacted them. So you contacted them 6 months ago, and any notes that you found out during that contact. So this way you can open this thing up. You're looking at it all the time. You've got, reminders set in your phone or whatever, and you know the exact time that you talked. So you email them and you say, okay, well, I reached out to you about this job that I'm interested in. And you said that you're currently looking at potential hirees right now. We're going to make the actual decision closer to this date, which is 3 months, 6 months down the line. They do that all the time. And you're gonna include any other notes that you get from this person. I like to, within the cold calls, any way that I can, you're moving up the levels of communication. So the levels of communication in my head look like this. So simply emailing someone is like the absolute base. That is the most impersonal, like cold call, just whatever thing that you can get. Being able to DM someone is above that. Okay, so we delete spam emails, right? We don't even look at those. We're like, we think it's a scam every single time we get one of those that's like, hey, we'd like to help you with your business. No, a DM, a message, a direct message, is always going to be a little bit higher up the social ladder. Still not that much at this point. 10 years ago it was better, but if you can get on an actual phone call with these people, that's even better. So that's the third tier, right? We're moving up. We're at nose level now, out of the water. A phone call is absolutely wonderful because all of a sudden they get to hear your personality. You get to interject quick little questions in there like, hey, oh my goodness, I just got done walking my dog this morning. It's been a great day, just having my coffee. And they're like, oh, I've got a dog too. Its name is Lucy. And then all of a sudden on that sheet of paper, you're on the other end of the phone and you're writing down notes. Dog's name is Lucy. And so when you get back to this company, after you message them on LinkedIn, you say, hey, I saw this position. What's the time frame for you guys to hire? I'd love to be able to reach out to you and talk to you about this role. If you've got a quick 5-minute call, that's all it's going to take, just to ask a couple questions. You find out about Lucy. 6 months later, you're contacting them back and you're saying, oh my goodness, I hope you and Lucy are just doing wonderful, that you two are doing so good, that Lucy's still, going for those wonderful walks every single day and peeing on that particular tree within the neighborhood, whatever it is. But what that does is it starts to build a personal rapport with these people who their job is to talk to hundreds of people every single day. They are always on the phone. They're always having new people cycle into their lives. And when someone actually says a name that's important to them or something that's relevant to them, it dings in their head and on their radar in a massive way that you cannot even imagine. You instantly stand out from the crowd. Now, above just a phone call, a 5-minute phone call, you don't want it to be important. You don't want to sound zealous. Just again, like I said at the very beginning, sounds super casual. Oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, I just saw this role and I think, I might be a good fit for it, or I might have someone else that I know. You just make somebody up that is coming from Activision that is kind of looking and would be a good hire for you guys. Say that, if you don't have the experience on your resume, make up a friend that does. And then, So you're going to write down the important people at that company on this list as well. So you're going to write down the names of who the creative director is, who the hiring manager is, who is the head technical artist, so that when you do get on this phone call or you get into these emails, you can start to drop some of these other names. You could say, if you're cold calling them for the first time, you could say, oh, I know Ian Clements. And I've been following his work for quite some time. He's a great artist that you guys have on your team. And I would love to be able to work with him within the role of being a technical designer. Notice it doesn't say you and Ian Clements went to college together, that you guys grew up on the same block. It just says that you know him. You can know him because you found him on LinkedIn. You found him looking through Instagram. And you've admired their work for quite some time. That's great. All of a sudden you're a fan. You're a what's that called? Not a zealot. That's a little bit too
evangelist.
An evangelist. Yeah, that's almost just as bad, but you get the idea. Yeah. That comes with bicycles, a white shirt, and a black tie. And so the last thing that I want you guys to keep track of when you're doing these cold calls here is how many times you've actually reached out to these companies, right? And that's sort of the situation that I'm dealing with right now within the city of Atlanta, Georgia. I've got 2 remote jobs, but I've been giving this city of Atlanta, Georgia, entirely too much time. I've been here for like 12 years. It's okay. It's good. It's working for me. I'm good at it. I understand it. But it's important to know when to keep moving, because some of these people, after a while, they're professionals at just sort of turning the buck and moving you on down the line. There's a very famous studio here in Atlanta named like William Street or Bento Box. That's another big one. Anywho, they made this TV show called Archer. I'm going to go back and share my screen again just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, they're pretty famous. Both Archer and Box.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you the story of Archer. So just if you guys have never seen this before, maybe this will clue you in, but this is the TV show Archer, and this is made within Atlanta, Georgia. So this TV show is absolutely hysterical. It's funny. They completely reinvented themselves like 6 seasons in because they were just bored with doing the superhero thing and changed the entire tone up in a big way. I think they're really, really clever and have done great things. However, this studio is facing an issue in which they can never seem to sell another project. So for as long as they've been in Atlanta, this is this studio's sort of bread and butter hit. And what happens with them is they will get the call from Cartoon Network, from TMT, from FX, from some major studio, and they're constantly pitching ideas to these network TV shows. And the network will show some interest, and they'll say, okay, we're interested. Why don't you go ahead and show us what a pilot looks like after they have their initial concept art that they present in their pitch for the show. And then the studio will start to contact everyone in my area, and they'll say, okay, well, we're hiring now for background artists and animators and compositors and yada, yada, yada. And everyone in the city of Atlanta jumps because they want to go work for the studio because they've done a lot of fun stuff. Well, inevitably, this studio is unable to secure the contract or the funding to be able to go through with that next hit TV show. And all those people that applied for the jobs just end up getting spun through the cycle again. And while one of these potential hiring rounds is going on, while they're trying to see who's available and putting up the sort of bat signal, if you will, they'll say, okay, well, we're going to start hiring within, the next 3 months. And that they're excited because they want to be able to hire a bunch of people, make more money, have another TV show on the networks. But the network never goes through with it, and they never buy the TV show. The hiring never happens. And this is a perfect example of having been spun through the washer and the dryer with these guys for years, where I know them all. I use I know all their names. I know what their dog names are. I've got, 20, 25, 40 different tallies for these people. They know who I am. I've been into the office multiple times. I've interviewed with them. And it just never seems to work out because they can't sell another show. And it's a really, really sad thing. But that's something you have to consider within these studios as well, is that they they're always running on a super tight budget. Keeping a 3D artist, a 2D animator, an illustrator on when they are not producing a TV show that's selling advertising dollars or selling video games is a lot of money for how much time and effort it takes to be able to produce this thing. They're working on shoestring budgets. One of my favorite examples that I like to give in other sessions is The Life of Pi. Did any of you guys see this movie back in the day? No, maybe not. That's all right. So anyways, this was Digital Domain is who created this lion. And at the time, the lion won Digital Domain the Best Visual Effects Awards for that year for the Oscar. And at the same time that this studio was accepting the Oscar, they ended up filing for bankruptcy and laying off with no notice all of their 3D animators and all their 3D artists after they won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. And what happened to Digital Domain was they were constantly going after the whales. This is perfect, right? And they were looking for the big fish within the sea, the big next movie contract. They had done the movie Tron as well, all the visual effects for that. And they spent so much time with studio revisions and kickbacks and re-render this thing that the budget was already set for the job, that they weren't able to make any more money off of it. They were pitching to other Hollywood studios to be able to get the role to be able to do the visual effects for stuff, and none of these Hollywood studios hired them. And so they ran out of budget and they had to close their doors because they weren't able to secure another major contract in time. And that's the way a lot of these studios are working out there, is they are on a very limited amount of time. They're working on a shoestring budget. This is worse. Going into this industry and starting one of these companies, if all you do is visual effects and you're not diversified with the things that your studio can do, is worse than owning a restaurant that's, only open every second Tuesday of the month. And, all you sell is, I don't know, chicken gizzards or something like that. But, so yeah, it's a little bit tricky. I hope that answers your question about how to be able to cold call and reach out to someone, the different tiers of communication. The final top tier that you can possibly have with somebody is saying, hey, I'd love to be able to come in, look at your facilities, take a tour of the studio. They don't want you to do that because they're always busy, they're always behind, and they don't want anyone judging them. But if you can, set up a meeting in a coffee shop or anything with these folks, that is always absolutely the best way to be able to build those relationships and let them get to know you. I had a creative director mentor that worked for a company called Huge here in Atlanta that I'd meet with, every 3 to 6 months or so, and just sit down and talk about the industry and what kind of challenges I was facing and what he was going through. And it really kind of helped me learn along the way. Huge Atlanta ad agency. I don't know if that's going to come up. Yep, there it is, Huge. So this is Huge. And they ended up creating so their studio is up on like the 5th floor of this building. And then down on the base floor, they created this coffee shop. And I thought this was a really, really smart use of the space. Huge, I guess it's called Brash Coffee. But essentially what this coffee shop is, they use it as a testing ground for all of the new software, UI, UX stuff that they're developing, payment methods. If there's any kind of technological thing that they're building for for a Fortune 500 company, then they use this coffee shop and the customers that come into it every day as sort of the baseline initial testers and adopters for what this technology can do, whether it's augmented reality or something else. So it's a pretty interesting way that they were able to generate a little bit of extra income when they're in between the large companies versus, instead of just going under. Huge has got about this many people employed. Oh boy. Okay. Let's see here. So we are approaching the back end of this today. We've got 13 minutes left. We'll go over just a little bit if we need to, but I want to keep it moving and show you guys this as well. So now let's just take a quick sample. All I've done is gone to LinkedIn, and I want to talk to you about some overviews when it comes to salary negotiations and what it is that we're currently seeing out there, just as a random sample within the United States. And I'm using the United States because that's where I'm from, but likely wherever your market is looks very similar to this right now. So we're talking in sort of big sweeps about how to be able to navigate this 3D world. So when I type in 3D Modeler United States on LinkedIn, here's what comes up. The very first one at the top of the list is going to be an AutoCAD, Civil 3D. This is, man, you need to have an engineering degree to be able to do this. If you've ever worked with AutoCAD before, a lot of times I get handed AutoCAD models when I'm doing television commercials or any kind of like 3D preview. A lot of times when, well, actually every time at this point, if you see a car commercial on television, that car commercial is not a car that actually exists yet. They give, when you're doing television car commercials, they give the 3D company, whoever's won the bid for this thing, that can do it the fastest and the cheapest, they've given them the actual AutoCAD model of the car 6 months to a year before that car leaves the assembly line and before it's even gone into mass production. And you're taking the physical model that they are going to feed into the computer to be able to cut all the die cuts to assemble the actual vehicle, gutting the model. So you're taking out every bolt, you're taking out everything that is not going to show up in the shot. It's a nightmare trying to clean one of these models. You're retopoing it and you're getting it ready to be able to actually render within the television commercial. So that's some of the ways that you'll interface with CAD models if you are not actually building them, but there's always going to be more work for that out there. The second top one here is another 3D civil engineering design, so product engineering, product design. Third one down is also that. It took us going to 4 to be able to find a visual effects 3D designer. Visual effects 3D design is an absolute treasure trove. There's not too many people when you're going through school that want to specialize in 3D visual effects or effect design. So if you take, an afternoon and a day to be able to learn these particle systems, they will hire you. And it is a great back door to be able to get into the industry. They are always looking for new people that are willing to do this. This is for any kind of visual effects work. So that's rotoscoping, things of that nature, creating band-aids, tracking. It's really kind of the 5 same essential skills that have become easier and easier. They keep on automating this. But if you learn these 5 essential skills, you will unlock the world of work never ending for yourself. And that's a great perk to have. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. Final thing on visual effects is that this is so much easier, so much more cut and paste. It's not as sexy. It's not the Mount Everest that creating a realistic 3D figure within 3D is. It's much simpler, but there's a lot more work for it out there. And this is a great set of skills. If you're having trouble finding a job, consider just doing a YouTube search on, rotoscoping, visual effects, matte painting, that type of stuff, and start doing some simple experiments that'll take you, 3 to 4 hours in an afternoon or an evening to be able to start building up a quick spot portfolio of this stuff to be able to start sending off to studios. A lot of these are also going to be in and out jobs. They're not long-term jobs. I've talked today about how within the 3D world, the work that you get a lot of time is gig-based. So you come in, you do the project, you make the 3D model for the game gets launched, and they kick you out the door. Same thing happens, the commercial gets done, and then you're out of there. It really just depends on the studio. So this is a great thing when you're interviewing and doing salary negotiation, is to say, hey, what is the turnover rate here? Do you guys have, blow fishing rounds and compression rounds within your studio? Be upfront, ask them these questions, because they won't tell you that right off the front. They're just excited because they got the contract that they've been trying to get to keep their heads above water, and they're trying to hire up, make it seem like they're the coolest people in the entire world. And you need to, as an individual, know whether or not, 3 months, 6 months down the line, once this project that you get brought onto is complete, if you're going to get kicked out the door, or what is their retention rate within the studio versus how many employees they currently have hired right now. So a lot of these companies will shrink back down just to like 10 or 12 core people. And then when they get a big contract, And this is if you're an entry-level position person, they're going to balloon out to anywhere from like 100 to 150 people, depending on the scale of the contract. And then they just bring it back down to their core people. And this is just one of the facets of the working world. And if that happens to be the case, then you need to make sure that you are positioning yourself to be able to negotiate your salary in such a way that you can survive for the next 3 months while you are looking for another job. Because a lot of times it does take 90 days, doesn't sound like a lot, to be able to bring in that next work. Sometimes it can take 6 months. But as you start to get these, save some of that money, live frugally. There's nothing worse than the film kids in Atlanta, Georgia. So I know Los Angeles is where they make all the film stuff, but here in Atlanta, we have a tax credit that's been bringing the film industry here for the past 10 years. So I've got a lot of buddies. They actually film more major blockbusters within the city of Atlanta. The Avengers films, everything, anything that you see that comes from America that's in cinema probably was filmed here in this state that I'm in. But the film kids that work here, they're in IATSE. And what they do is they go and they work these insane hours where they are going to be working, 60, 90, sometimes 100 hours a week, not sleeping for a month, 3 months. And then they make all this money, they get paid overtime, and then they are out of a job for the next 6 months. And when they're out of a job for those next 6 months, those dudes, man, they party their butts off. They drink like pirates coming back to shore after being out at sea. And they never really make any savings for themselves. And that's something, kind of leaving this chat, coming to the back end of it today, that I would really encourage you guys. There's a great book out there. It's called The Talbot, and it's the Jewish Book of Money. So it'll teach you all about the 2,000-year-old system for how to be able to save and invest your money. I read that when I was very young, and it helped me an awful lot. But keep that in mind, that I know you're hungry right now for work and to be able to get a job, but make sure that when you are negotiating for those salaries, that you are setting yourself up to be able to put enough away for the rainy days, for your future, to be able to sustain yourself in between the gaps, so that you don't have to go back to, like I was for a long time, bartending or doing some other type of role while you're trying to make time to stick in this creative industry. And it's a tricky thing. I like to, whenever I see a job position, so this one is 75 to 85 an hour, I would throw out, can you guys do $95 an hour? This is in Los Angeles, California. So I would raise the dollar per hour rate by $10 an hour or $15 an hour, depending. So if it goes down to 40,000, this is a huge jump, senior technical animator, 50,000 to 100K. Man, that is crazy for Charlotte, North Carolina. That's such a big spread with $50,000 there. This is a 3D rendering designer role. If you are at the top end and you know that you're a senior person with, let's just look at what the requirements are. So this one says 401k. What do you need to have? There you go. 6 years of experience working with AutoCAD. AutoCAD again. Working in an on-site setting. All right. 6 years working experience with SketchUp. SketchUp is super easy to be able to learn. You can, with what you guys are doing and the skills that you all have, you can learn this in an afternoon. It's an easy one to be able to add to your resume, to add to your LinkedIn. And it's going to be one of those buzzwords that causes you to start showing up in a lot more searches. Okay. So we're at the very back end of this thing today. I know that this has been a lot of information and a winding talk that we've had. Within 1 hour, I'm trying to give you guys sort of the big overview kind of touch points, how to be able to think about this thing from the perspective of, is the pay enough for the long term? What are some of the things that you need to negotiate that are going to be important to you when it comes to your commute, if you're going to be on-site or off-site? And, what does the job entail? Is the culture of the job going to be one that you're actually going to enjoy and that you really want to be at and with? That's fringe. That's totally a nice thing. We've also talked about how to be able to connect with somebody in the different tiers and levels of communication when it comes to connecting with folks. If you guys want to keep in touch with me, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and we'll put up on the screen Notepad. No, wait. Now I'm sharing my screen again. Here, no, wait, sorry. I know I've got a chat around here somewhere. All right, so within the chat, I'm going to put my social information here. It's Skato, SKATOORG. And you can also find me at scatoorg@gmail.com. Guess what? My art station is also scato.org. My Behance is scato.org. My YouTube is scato.org. My Facebook page is scato.org. So it's pretty consistent all the way across. And my website is www.scato.org. Pretty easy fellow to find on all the different socials. If you guys ever have any questions, comments, if you find yourself in a situation where you have got a job offer letter that you're feeling a little bit shaky about, please just let me know. One last thing to talk about. I think most companies have stopped this business, but when it comes to like art test, you have to be, you have to be really careful with the art test. A lot of people will run you into the ground and waste an entire weekend of your life completing one of these art tests and then never get back to you again. If they're going to ask you to do an art test, they can at least pay you a base hourly salary to complete the art test for them. And there's nothing wrong with asking that. So, oh, well, we've got this art test that we send out, for you guys to be able to see, what you can do. Then say, okay, well, if you want me to do some work to prove in my resume, my portfolio, the work that I have done in the past isn't enough, then you're going to go ahead and need to pay me a little bit of money to complete this art test. And if they say they're not willing to do that, they're probably not going to be willing to negotiate with you on salary. They're not going to be willing to do a lot of things for you. And there are other studios that are out there that will hire you based on your work, based on your past experience, based on actually talking to you as a human being and not just the art test. And those are usually the people that you actually want to work with and be involved around. So let's take the last couple minutes if you answer one or two questions if you guys have any before we wrap this thing up today. But thank you so much for hearing me out on this, and hope it's been useful.
It was awesome, Will. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any out the door questions for you guys? Anything that's percolating, burning in your brain that you're like, oh, but he didn't talk about this, and I thought he was going to say this thing.
Like I call it the wish list when you're applying to jobs, where it's like, okay, I can't do that, but I have similar experience. Like, what advice would you give to people in terms of applying for jobs where they just list off a laundry list of what they want for potential employers? Because especially like when you're just starting out and applying for positions, like, do we apply? Do we go to the next one, or do we apply and just say, hey, we can learn it on the fly? Like, what's the best tactics for those in terms of applying for positions?
Oh, that's a good question, man. I think that's a good one to end it on today as well. So. You kind of have the work experience, you know that you can do the job. So for myself, when I graduated from school with my computer art degree, I had the skill set, right? I could do anything in 3D. If someone asked me to make Leonardo DiCaprio on the front of the Titanic, growing angel wings and flying off into the sunset, I could make that. However, no one had paid me to be able to do something like that at that time. And so my portfolio did not show what it was that I could actually do. And I didn't have time to be able to make Leonardo DiCaprio because I was trying to survive. So to this day, I still get companies that, a good example of this is the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel their home base is also here in Atlanta, Georgia. They pay great, but they are notorious for turnover and having this creative director that is just the worst. Like, no one in the city can work with them, and this is why they pay so much, because they're hoping someone can come in and like just deal with this person. So I got in for this interview through a headhunting agency. I already knew what the job was, and usually when I go in with the headhunting agency, they're already like, okay, well, we're going to hire this guy. We've agreed that here's his rate, etc. I go in there and I'm onboarding for the job. I went into the Weather Channel and sat down and started giving my sort of pitch. And they stopped me and they're like, wait a second, we don't see web banners, like animated web banners anywhere in your portfolio. Do you have any examples of animated web banners? And I was like, I have like full flash animated like movies. I have like motion graphics. I have like these crazy 3D models. I have all this graphic design work that I've done that's been in stadiums. Yeah, I can do a flash banner. Am I showing that within my portfolio? No, I'm not. What are you talking about? And that was a really, really frustrating moment for me. You're always going to run into that exact thing where you've got the skill set to be able to do all this stuff. And then the company's going to say, well, you've got a whole portfolio of like Wild West cowboys and Indians and like, just the best, like, gunslinger horses, Old West villages. You nailed it. And then all of a sudden someone comes through and they're like, well, we don't see any sci-fi things in there. Can you do sci-fi? And it's like, if I can study this particular art style and learn it to this degree, yes, I can figure out how to do sci-fi stuff. And convincing those people, man, it's tricky. When they start to play that game with you, you just, again, try to keep it casual and laugh at them and have a good time with it. But I understand the fear now that I've worked in studios and know what the budgeting looks like of hiring someone blind. And you need to be able to really reassure them or try to reassure them the best you can with having a large breadth of styles and designs, not just a one-note actor or character within your portfolio. That does help to sort of reassure them, because not every artist can really break from their particular style or become a chameleon if you're going to be a production artist to be able to take on whatever style or look or design treatment it is that the company's needing. And then the last thing here for that is the unicorn ask. So a lot of times within LinkedIn, for some of these smaller companies that you'll see, and this happens all the time. It's not a new thing. It's been going on for 20 years. It's probably going on 20 years before that. So where you went to school to be a 3D artist, you know how to do 3D art very well, and all of a sudden the job description says, okay, well, we need a 3D artist, but we also need a 3D artist who can animate, who can texture, who can render, who can light, who can do After Effects. Also, if you could build us like a car, we'd love for you to be able to do that. Having automotive skills, wonderful, not required, but it'd be great if you could. And they start asking for this like unicorn to be able to come in to the office. If that's the case and the job description is asking you to be able to do 5 other people's jobs, as a creative within this world, you have the responsibility to email these people and say, okay, I would love to be able to work for you guys. I feel that I'm qualified to be able to handle all these different roles and responsibilities that you guys are asking me to complete. However, if I'm going to be doing the work of 5 people's jobs, then I need to be paid accordingly for that. And then you come back with your salary negotiation, and we're right there to what this entire talk was about today. Any other quick questions that I can try and answer for you guys? All right, let's call it. You guys, thank you so much for hearing me out today. A lot of information dropped on you really quick. I hope your brains aren't feeling too squeezed or too full. If you a couple of hours go by and all of a sudden you're like, man, I wish I'd asked him this. Again, you've got my socials within the chat. Please follow up or follow me on there, and I'm happy to be able to answer any further questions that you think of. Thank you so much for attending this today. Don't forget to fill out the survey, and you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Will.
Hey,
Thanks,
guys.
Will. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.